Good evening and welcome. Tonight, Senate committee holds closed-door meeting with the Chief of Army Staff over the security situation in the Northeast as the APC calls for international probe of the Boko Haram sect. Activities paralyzed in some hospitals across the country as the Joint Health Sectors Union begins indefinite strike. Federal government says action is unnecessary. Our big story tonight looks at the persistent communal clashes in Nasarawa State, despite all efforts to end the bloodletting. On business news tonight, dwindling oil prices, among other factors, may cause the monetary policy rate to be tinkered with, so economists predict.
And on sports news tonight, as the Super Eagles jet out to Congo, Coach Stephen Keshi says the objective is nothing but victory in Pt.1.
We begin tonight with the security situation in the Northeast, and the Senate Committee on Defense and Army says it's worried that elections may not hold in the troubled zone in 2015 because of terrorist activities in the area. In a veiled challenge to the military, the chairman of the committee, Senator George Sekibo, at a meeting with the Chief of Army Staff today said elections would only hold in the 3 troubled northeastern states if the army is able to recapture all the territories seized by Boko Haram and restore peace to the areas. The committee invited the Chief of Army Staff to discuss the increasing insurgency in the Northeast. Our correspondent, Linda Akigbe, reports.
The Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Kenneth Minima, makes his way into the meeting room in the National Assembly. He is here to meet with the Senate Committee on Defense and Army to explain why the Nigerian Army has not been able to overcome Boko Haram, which has been unleashing terror in the northern part of the country. This week alone, dozens of children were killed at the Government Technical Science College in Potiskum, Yobe State. And just 3 days later, a female suicide bomber blew herself up at the Federal College of Education, Kontagora, Niger State. The chairman of a defense committee opened the discussion.
The way it is going, for instance, if they have taken over maybe 9 or 10 local government areas, we are not quite sure. But if they are taking over such a number of places, can some, even of our colleagues, go for election in those central districts? Can the elections of all other officers, governors, the president, state house assembly, can they be held in those areas?
As with meetings dealing with security issues, committee members asked journalists to leave to allow for frank discussions. The Chief of Army Staff was also not prepared to address journalists without briefing the committee in private first. Done with the discussions, more than 2 hours later, the Chief of Army Staff had this to say.
We had a setback in Baza that resulted in the loss of territories up till Mobi. And painful though, but we're working very hard to retake those territories. And very soon we will reclaim those territories, and indeed other territories held by these elements.
The chairman of the Defense Committee also answered questions which had to do with the feasibility of elections holding in the troubled northeastern states in 2015.
If we are able to get back all the territories that have been captured by the insurgents, then it means that there is peace in those areas and we can go for election.
Although the Chief of Army Staff assured Nigerians that the Nigerian Army would reclaim the areas taken over by Boko Haram, there are still critical questions that need answers, such as how do the terrorists bring weapons into the country? Does the Nigerian Army have enough troops and ammunition to confront the terrorists? And whatever happened to the alleged ceasefire agreement? Linda Akibe, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, the All Progressive Congress, the APC, has called for an impartial international commission of inquiry to investigate and unmask perpetrators of terrorism in the country. The national chairman of the APC, Chief John Oyegun, told a news conference in Abuja that the government needs to make the system more responsive to the issues instead of calling for a ceasefire. The opposition party observed that the alleged ceasefire agreement has only left the people more vulnerable, appealing to the international community to remain vigilant on the crisis. Our correspondent Gloria Umezoke reports.
In a persistent fashion, scores of children and families continue to meet their untimely death owing to terrorist attacks, which have intensified in the northeastern part of the country. The group's ambitions are very clear, but how the federal government has tackled the challenge so far raises more questions than answers. The All Progressive Congress, in a news conference, noted that some people might be exploiting the security crisis for political advantages.
An impartial international commission of inquiry be set up to look into this Boko Haram issue. Why is it what it is? So the more savage it is, the more they are allowed to threaten, the more they are allowed to progress, the more the people of this nation will feel the necessity to cling to the apron strings of a failed government. Blackmail, pure and simple.
The opposition further noted that the government has failed to stop corruption and impunity. Analyzing the security challenge, the APC asked the government to desist from ceasefire agreements which leave the people more vulnerable.
Every day we hear that our troops are not adequately armed. What is happening to the resources being deployed? Where is our intelligence service? So what we will do is to make the system work.
People should suspend political differences and work together to solve the problem. And this was the whole point about the various initiatives, put on the table and, effectuated by President Jonathan. Government will do whatever it takes, no matter how long it takes, whatever is required to ensure that the will of the terrorists, the will of evildoers, does not prevail in this country.
The series of attacks on schools, for instance, leaves a very unclear picture of how many casualties there are or will be if urgent steps, according to the opposition party, is not taken by the government to stem the tide of violence in the country. Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
Well, the president has once again given the assurance that his administration is on top of the security situation in the country and that terrorism will soon be a thing of the past. President Goodluck Jonathan gave the assurance at a coastal meeting with the members of the Catholic Bishops' Conference of Nigeria in the presidential villa. The president of the conference, Archbishop Ignatius Kegama, who led his colleagues to the meeting, said they're disturbed the parts of Nigeria are being taken away with so many people displaced and turned refugees in their fatherland. The United States has picked holes in the claims by Nigeria's ambassador to the country, Adebowale Adefuye, that the U.S. has failed to help Nigeria fight Boko Haram militants. In a speech made public on Tuesday, Ambassador Adefuye had said that Nigeria was not satisfied with the scope, nature, and content of the United States support for Nigeria in its struggle to end terrorism within its borders. But the State Department spokesperson, Jen Psaki, responded saying the U.S. had done a great deal to assist Nigeria by sharing intelligence with Nigeria's military and training a new battalion of the army, as well as holding high-level talks on the matter. Ms. Psaki also revealed that the U.S. has provided and approved sales of military equipment to Nigeria's armed forces. Decisions, she said, were made after careful scrutiny to ensure they conform with United States law. We turn our attention now to the health workers in the country. The industrial action declared by the Joint Health Sectors Union appears to be taking its toll now on public hospitals and other health facilities in parts of the country. It was gathered that in places such as the nation's capital, Abuja, the Ogun State capital, Abeokuta, and Kaduna in the northwest, Activities in some hospitals and other health centers have been paralyzed, and patients who had called at the facilities for medical attention were turned back. The union yesterday threatened to call its members out on an industrial action today over the non-implementation of agreements reached with the federal government 2 months ago. Our correspondent, Yomi Otaigbe, has more.
Their faces tell it all. Physical pains aggravated by the absence of medical services in a health system entangled by incessant strikes. The people seeking medical care in public hospitals across the nation appear disappointed in the system. They bear the brunt of a tussle between the federal government of Nigeria and healthcare workers. This time, the joint health sector unions made up of health professionals such as nurses, pharmacists, medical lab scientists, and physiotherapists, among others, are the aggrieved ones.
Solidarity forever, for the union makes us strong.
These are the currently on strike. So the doctors are not on strike, but the junior staffs, they are on strike.
What they are asking for from the federal government, so the federal government should do it for them to save the life of we that we normally come to the hospital here.
While the people look elsewhere for medical services in places where they may pay exorbitant bills or get substandard treatment from quacks, health unions under JOHESU, having achieved the implementation of their consultancy status, want other demands met, and these include the immediate release of circular on harmonization of salary, which the industrial court had ruled on, among others.
To the teeming patients that also patronize National Health Center, we want to appeal to them to remain calm, to also understand with us that what we are after is our right. And until our rights are met, we might not have the psychological balance to, attend to them.
Although members of JOHESU are on strike, some medical doctors are seen attending to patients.
I will tell you that medical doctors are not part of JOHESU. And medical doctors, they will continue to render services. They are fully on ground. They are working. For us, National Hospital, of course, the medical doctors and other non-clinical support services, they are running their services, which means that patients are being seen as usual. But the only thing we can deduce from this strike is there's no way it will not affect the full services in the hospital because we have this JOHESU union, the group. They are also part of effective rendering of services in any hospital setup.
It's another indefinite strike in Nigeria's health sector, perhaps one that may or may not be prolonged. Nigerians will be looking forward to a quick and lasting resolution of the issues, expecting all parties concerned to have in mind that any life lost as a result of this strike, as in the case of others, can never be restored. Yomi Otaigbe reporting for Channels Television News.
In part 2, after the break, suspects accused of kidnapping legal practitioner Michael Zekome alleged making confessional statements under duress. That's the moment. Please join us again.